You'd think that after walking across a stage in a polyester gown under the blazing June sun, the most humbling thing to happen would be tripping while receiving your diploma. You'd be wrong. The most humbling thing is being dropped off at a bus stop 20 minutes later, in said polyester gown, holding a half-empty Gatorade bottle, a backpack from sophomore year with a broken zipper, and exactly $60 in cash, courtesy of a pity card signed, "Love you always, Mom and Dad." They didn't even get out of the car. My mom leaned across the passenger seat, sunglasses on, chewing her gum like it owed her money, and said, "Good luck out there, hon." Then they pulled away, my dad driving, my mom waving out the window like I'd just left for summer camp, not permanent exile. No hugs. No tears. Not even a selfie for social media. And so, there I stood 18 years old. No job. No college acceptance. No plan. Just me, my "Congrats, grad" balloon that kept bonking into my head, and the sudden, nauseating realization that I wasn't going home. It would be the first of many surprises that day. Let's rewind for context. I was the third child out of 5. Not the oldest, already a disappointment, not the youngest, still precious, not the smartest, valedictorian, or the prettiest, Instagram-famous cheerleader. Just Ethan. The quiet one. The "you'll figure it out" kid. The one who once got forgotten at Target for 3 hours because "we thought you were in the other car." I wasn't unloved, necessarily. I was just invisible. Like a chair you don't notice until someone trips over it. While my siblings got SAT prep classes and customized dorm trunks, I got told, "Trade school's always an option," followed by a long silence and a shrug. I did okay in school, BS, and the occasional triumphant A in history when the teacher gave open note tests. But I wasn't a standout. And in a family where standout was currency, I might as well have been bankrupt. Still, I thought I had time. Maybe a summer job. Maybe community college. Maybe someone would offer a plan, or, bare minimum, a ride home. Instead, they gave me $60 and a Greyhound schedule printed on a flyer. So, I sat down on that metal bench, pulled my hoodie over my gown, and stared at the gum-stained sidewalk while my classmates posed for backyard barbecue photos with congratulatory balloons and uncles grilling steaks. I, meanwhile, split a vending machine pack of peanut M&Ms with a guy named Kurt who swore he was going to Reno to become a magician or a cult leader, whichever paid first. And somewhere between Kurt's 5th story about seeing into the future, and a pigeon that refused to leave my shoelaces alone, it finally hit me. I was free. Utterly. Absolutely. Terrifyingly free. No more waiting for someone to save me. No more wondering why they never clapped at my band concerts. No more chasing approval like it was air and I was drowning. Just $60, a backpack, and a ridiculous desire to prove them all wrong. I took that bus. Didn't even know where I was going. Just picked a direction and promised myself I'd never sit on a metal bench like that again, unless it had my name on a plaque and pigeons were legally banned from the county. The bus dropped me off in the middle of nowhere, technically, a town called Brookfield. Population, barely visible. The kind of place where gas stations double as diners, and every storefront has a hand-painted, "Help Wanted" sign that looks like it's been there since the 90s. I didn't pick Brookfield for any reason other than the fact that the transfer terminal had vending machines and working toilets. That alone made it luxurious compared to the last 2 stops. I had $38 left after bus fare and vending machine dinner. My feet were blistered, my stomach sounded like a dying vacuum, and my phone was already at 12%. But I had one thing no one had ever given me before. Time. Mine. I found a motel called Sunny Pines. Spoiler, no pines. No sun either. Just a flickering neon sign and a clerk who looked like she hadn't slept since Bush was president. "How long you staying?" she asked. I slid a $20 across the counter. "Until this runs out." The room smelled like old carpet, cigarette ash, and broken dreams. But the water worked, the deadbolt locked, and the microwave didn't explode when I cooked a dollar store burrito. So, by my new standards, paradise. That night, I lay on a lumpy mattress, staring at a ceiling that looked like it had water damage and a ghost infestation, and I tried to make a plan. Something, anything. I opened my notebook. Yeah, I still carried one back then. I was the kind of kid who wrote stuff down even if I never looked at it again. I flipped to a blank page and wrote, Ethan Blake's Survival Guide, Chapter 1. Underneath, I listed everything I knew how to do. Make eggs scrambled only. Fix a leaky faucet. Change a tire, thanks to YouTube, not Dad. Play guitar passably, if everyone was a little drunk. Not die, hopefully. It wasn't much. But it was more than I'd had that morning. I got a job the next day at a gas station. The manager's name was Ted, and he hired me after a 5-minute chat and a handshake that felt like it came with tetanus. My first shift started that afternoon. It paid $8.50 an hour under the table. No benefits. No breaks. But I showed up early, left late, and said thank you after every customer, even the ones who tossed change at me like I was a wishing well. Nights were the worst. Not because of the motel. I upgraded after a week to a room with less mildew and fewer raccoons, but because that's when it got quiet. Too quiet. When you've grown up in a house full of chaos, screaming siblings, TV always on, mom yelling at someone to turn off the oven, silence feels like a punishment. Like someone forgot to press play on your life. There were nights I sat on the motel bed with a microwaved Hot Pocket, scrolling through old texts just to remind myself I had once existed to other people. I reread my graduation messages. Most were generic. Congrats. Good luck out there. Stay in touch, dude. I didn't. I couldn't. No one reached out after that week. Not my parents. Not my siblings. Not even my best friend from high school, Tyler, who once swore we'd make it big together. I saw on Facebook later that he moved to Austin, started DJing, and married someone who sold protein shakes from her Instagram. Meanwhile, I sold gas station beef jerky and prayed my socks would last another week. And yet, I kept going. Why? Because every time I started to feel like maybe my parents were right, maybe I was just average, forgettable, disposable, I remembered that bus stop. I remembered the car driving away. My mom's voice saying, "Good luck out there," like she was mailing a birthday card to a stranger. And it made me mad. But not in the flip-a-table, start-a-revenge blog way. It made me the quiet kind of mad. The "I will outlive your expectations" kind. The kind that burns slow, like coals under ash. I wasn't chasing their approval anymore. I was chasing something else. Something I hadn't even named yet. 3 months into my Brookfield exile, I had $412 in a Velveeta cheese box, 3 work uniforms, all stained, and a sleep schedule that could qualify as medical malpractice. I worked at the gas station mornings, mopped floors at a Chinese buffet evenings, and on Sundays, washed dishes at a diner called Rita's that hadn't changed its wallpapers since 1983. It paid cash under the table and came with all the stale biscuits I could carry out in a napkin. On one particularly dead shift at Rita's, while elbow-deep in a sink of soapy water and despair, I met Jo. She was a waitress who'd moved back home after a failed shot at culinary school in Atlanta. Purple hair, tired eyes, and a sarcasm level that could slice drywall. "New guy?" she asked, flicking her cigarette outside the kitchen door. "You look like you fell out of a college brochure for what not to do after graduation." "I'm Ethan," I said. She grinned. "Nice to meet you, Ethan. I'm Jo. I used to have dreams, too." That was our bond, shared bitterness, low wages, and being left behind. Jo introduced me to Bruno, her dog with 3 legs and more personality than most of my extended family. She also introduced me to her friend Caleb, who ran a second-hand furniture store and needed someone to help refinish wood tables in the back. "Pays like trash," she said. "But he's weird and will feed you sandwiches." I said yes. Obviously. So I added a 3rd job to my resume, now proudly stacked with convenience clerk, buffet janitor, dish rat, woodshop gopher. It didn't make sense to anyone. But it made sense to me. Because I was building something. Slowly. Like stacking pennies while everyone else had $100 bills, but still stacking. The shop job changed everything. Not all at once. But Caleb, the owner, saw something in me I didn't even know existed. He showed me how to sand properly, how to match finishes, how to see the shape inside rough wood before it was carved. I was decent with my hands, but under his watch, I got good. "You got patience," he said once. "That's rare." I nearly cried. Not because it was poetic, but because no adult had ever said something nice to me without following it up with a "but." Not, "You got patience, but you're not leadership material." Not, "You're reliable, but not smart enough for more." Just, "That's rare." At night, I started sketching things. Bookshelves. Desk organizers. A ridiculous wine rack no one needed. I had no tools. No real training. Just notebook paper, scrap plywood, and a YouTube playlist called Woodworking for Idiots. Jo caught me one afternoon at the diner, drawing on the back of an old order pad. "You good?" she asked. I shrugged. "Just messing around." She squinted at the sketch. "That's a shelf, right?" "Yeah." Could have fooled me. I thought it was abstract sadness. We laughed. But she took a picture of it and sent it to her cousin, who managed a home boutique in the next town. 2 weeks later, they asked if I could build one, just like it, and if I had any more designs. I almost said no. I mean, I was still sharing a microwave with a family of centipedes in a rented room above a used tire shop. I didn't even have a shop. I had Caleb's dusty back room and a few borrowed tools. But Jo said, "Don't be dumb, Ethan. Say yes and figure it out later." So I did. I built that first piece in Caleb's shop at night. Took me 4 days and a small collection of splinters, but when I dropped it off at the boutique, the owner paid me $150 and asked if I could do 4 more by the end of the month. I walked out of there like I had just closed a real estate deal. Called Jo from a payphone because my phone had finally given up and died forever. "They liked it," I said. "No sh*t," she replied. "You made it." It wasn't success. But it was spark. It was the first time I didn't feel like I was stuck in the life someone else handed me. It was mine now. And I wasn't giving it back. I didn't mean to become a business owner. Honestly, I just wanted to be able to pay rent without choosing between laundry and instant noodles. But the boutique kept ordering more shelves. Then a friend of the owner asked for a custom bench. Then Jo's aunt commissioned a dog bed. That doesn't look like trash. And suddenly I had more requests than time, all coming from people I hadn't begged, guilt-tripped, or tricked into helping me. People just liked my work. Caleb let me keep using his back room in exchange for helping him sand antiques on weekends. I'd show up at 6 a.m., make coffee, and split my days between restoring someone's scratched-up heirloom and crafting mid-century shelves out of salvaged pine. I named the side project Brain Theory. Jo said it sounded like a hipster band. I said, "Good. If this fails, I'll start one." The first time someone posted one of my builds on Instagram and tagged me, I had a panic attack. Not even exaggerating. I hadn't seen my name attached to anything that wasn't a W-2 form or an overdue phone bill in years. But there it was. At Grain Theory Builds, custom entryway table, reclaimed oak, sealed and sanded by hand. Built by Ethan Blake. And beneath it, a comment from someone I didn't know. "This is beautiful. Do you ship?" I stared at that comment for 5 minutes. Then I refreshed the page just to make sure it hadn't disappeared. Turns out, I had built something worth noticing. It scared me. Because when you've spent most of your life being invisible, attention doesn't feel like applause, it feels like a trap. What if they find out I'm still living above a tire shop? What if they ask where I went to school and I say, YouTube University? What if they realize I'm not really good, just good enough until someone better shows up? Jo saw me spiraling and said, "Ethan, chill. You make shelves, not heart valves." But she also grabbed my arm and added, "Also, you're the real deal. Act like it." She believed in me before I believed in myself. So I kept building. Word spread. Slowly at first, one tagged photo, one satisfied customer, one coffee shop asking if I could do a custom counter. But it snowballed. I made a $600 sale once and thought I was being pranked. When the money cleared, I stared at my bank app like I just hacked NASA. With the help of a friend who knew Squarespace, I launched a basic website. It was clunky, but it worked. Joe helped with photos and captions. You write like a tax form, let me fix it. And Caleb refused to take rent for the shop space anymore. You're keeping the lights on. He shrugged. I've been coasting since 2012 anyway. That meant something. Everything, really. It was the first time I wasn't just tolerated. I was needed. Valued. I even started sending money to Bruno's vet. Joe never asked, but I knew she was tight some months. I told her it was a business expense. You wrote off dog biscuits? She laughed. Brand loyalty, I said. But somewhere between sanding edges and gluing joints, I started dreaming bigger. A real shop. My own. A space with tools I bought. With lights that didn't flicker and windows that didn't leak in the rain. I started saving, seriously. Every dollar I didn't need went into an envelope labeled "Break the Cycle." That's what this was all about. Not revenge. Not, look what you missed out on. Just this quiet, stubborn need to not be the Ethan Blake who got dropped at a bus stop like a forgotten coat. I wanted to build something they couldn't take credit for. That they wouldn't even see coming. And I knew, someday, they would. Because people like that always do. They don't notice you when you're drowning. But they show up when they think they smell gold. 2 years later, I signed the lease on my first real space. Not a borrowed backroom or an extension cord fire hazard. A 1,200 square foot unit on the edge of downtown with skylights, cement floors, and enough room to store every tool I used to dream about. A friend of Caleb sold me a vintage drill press for $300 and tossed in a belt sander for free just because I looked like a guy who'd appreciate it. I painted the walls white, installed a Bluetooth speaker system, and hung a crooked wooden sign above the workbench that read, "Build better than they remember you." I didn't throw a party. I didn't post a long Instagram caption. I just showed up the next morning at 6:30 a.m., made coffee in a French press Joe insisted I buy, and opened the back doors to let the light in. It smelled like sawdust, espresso, and freedom. And for the first time since that bus stop, I didn't feel like I was surviving. I was thriving. Grain Theory was doing well, not viral or flashy, but consistent. I had clients from 3 states, a waitlist for larger projects, and 2 part-time helpers I paid fairly and fed even better. Joe handled some of the marketing now, though she called herself head of vibes. I even got featured in a small business spotlight blog, which, apparently, was enough for my past to sniff me out. It started with a Facebook friend request. Angela B. wants to connect. Angela B., my mother. I stared at the screen for a full 10 minutes, half expecting it to vanish. Like maybe it was a phishing scam or the universe playing a cruel joke. I didn't accept. I didn't delete. I just stared at the blinking notification bubble, wondering what she'd seen. Had she Googled me? Had someone tagged me in a post? Had she just remembered she had a middle child with calloused hands and a grudge the size of a barn? Then came the message. Hey, stranger. Just thinking about you today. Hope you're well. Yellowheart would love to catch up sometime. No mention of the bus stop. No mention of the missing years, the birthdays skipped, the letters unsent. Just, hey, stranger. I didn't answer. But I didn't block her either. Maybe it was curiosity. Maybe I wanted to see if she'd try harder. 2 days later, another message. Your cousin Bailey saw your shelves online. They look so professional. You always had that spark face-blowing kiss. I laughed out loud. I hadn't spoken to Bailey since I was 16, and he poured soda in my backpack at a family barbecue. But now he was proud? Right. Then came the email. From my dad this time. Subject line. Family reunion, this June. Inside was a flyer. Clip art balloons. Times New Roman font. Blake family, reunited and stronger than ever. It was happening in our hometown, 90 minutes away. I hadn't been back in over a decade. At the bottom of the email. Would love to see you there. It's been too long. Everyone's asking about you. I doubt that. I doubt they even noticed I was gone until the right person tagged me on the wrong website. I stared at the flyer. At the smiling cartoon family holding hands like nothing ever fractured. Like no one ever stood on a sidewalk with $60 and a balloon. I closed the email. But I didn't delete it. I printed it out and stuck it to my shop fridge. Not out of sentiment. Out of planning. Because for the first time, I wasn't going to hide. I wasn't going to show up apologizing. I was going to show up seen. I didn't decide to go to the reunion right away. I stared at that flyer for 2 weeks, taped to my shop fridge next to Joe's handwritten grocery lists, and a faded photo of Bruno in a cowboy hat. Every time I went to grab an iced coffee or a yogurt, it stared back at me. The Blake family reunion, reunited and stronger than ever. Stronger than ever? Funny. I didn't remember getting the invite to that emotional gym membership. Joe was the one who finally called it out. You going? I haven't decided. You thinking about showing up in silence, all humble and mysterious? Maybe. You're a liar and a coward, she said. This is your origin story. You don't show up invisible. You show up in something that says I built a life without you. She was right. So I made a call. To a guy I'd built a dining table for the year before. He ran a limo service out of the city. I told him I needed something for a very specific occasion. He said, You want flashy or quiet power? Quiet power, I said. But with a loud horn. The day of the reunion I shaved. Wore a white linen button-down that Joe said made me look like a man with options. Aviators. Brown leather watch. My best boots, the ones I bought after my first $1,000 sale and told no one about. I pulled up to the park in a black Lincoln Continental Stretch. It was elegant. Quietly imposing. The kind of car that made people straighten their backs and squint into the tinted windows, wondering who just arrived. The driver opened the door for me like I was royalty. Heads turned. Conversations paused. A frisbee hit a lawn chair because some cousin's kid forgot physics in the presence of mystery. I stepped out slowly. No speech. No sunglasses removal. Just a nod to the sky, one hand in my pocket, like I'd been walking into this moment my whole life. And for a few seconds, they didn't recognize me. Not because I'd changed that much, but because they never really looked at me in the first place. My mother gasped first. Hand over her chest like I'd risen from the dead and was about to demand tribute. My father said nothing. Just stared like he was trying to remember if I was a cousin's kid or someone from an insurance commercial. Natalie, my sister, the golden child of golden children, gave me a once-over and said, Ethan? Like it was a question. I smiled. Hey, stranger. Her face twitched. Joe had begged me to bring a camera crew. For TikTok. Or therapy. I didn't. Because this wasn't for content. This was for me. I walked toward the drink table like I'd RSVP'd with God himself. Poured a lemonade. Sipped it. Then looked around like I was checking on the kingdom. The silence? Delicious. Eventually, Mom came over. She looked smaller than I remembered. Not physically, just deflated. Like life had finally caught up and whispered, You left one behind. She opened her mouth. Probably to say something like, You look good. Or, I meant to call you. I beat her to it. Nice spread, I said, nodding at the charcuterie table. Oh, yes. We did a potluck, she replied. I brought my own, I said, nodding toward the limo. She blinked. I sipped again. Dad approached next. Still quiet. Still unreadable. I didn't expect you, he said finally. I didn't expect the bus stop, I replied. Touché. We stood there for a moment. Two men with the same chin, same eyes, and nothing else in common. Then he said, You've done well for yourself. I know. You could have called. You could have turned around. He had no comeback for that. Eventually, they tried to slide into comfort. Asking questions. Complimenting my business. Casually name-dropping friends who saw my stuff online. I gave short answers. Let them scramble. Because this wasn't revenge. It was a revelation. They didn't leave me behind because I was nothing. They left me because I didn't fit their version of success. Now they didn't know how to fit me into theirs. After the initial shock wore off, The family did what families always do when they're confused but don't want to admit it. They ate. Cousin Bailey passed me a plate of pulled pork like we were war buddies. Someone asked if I still played guitar. Uncle Mike cornered me near the potato salad and said, "Man, you clean up nice. What you been up to? Something with tools, right?" I gave him a polite nod and said, "Something like that." Truth was, I could have pulled out a business card, a sales sheet, or even my website on a phone. But I didn't. Because I wasn't there to explain myself anymore. I was there to be noticed, without begging for it. And this time, I didn't feel the need to audition for my own family. They danced around it, though, asking questions that were almost apologies. Statements that sounded like praise but came laced with that familiar edge. "You always had potential, we just didn't know where it'd land. Bet you're glad we taught you how to be tough. Guess all that independence paid off, huh?" They were rewriting the narrative, in real time. I let them. Because correcting it would mean validating it. And I didn't owe them clarity. Not anymore. Joe had told me to watch for it, the moment where power shifts. When the people who once talked over you suddenly pause to study your reaction like it's worth something. It happened near the dessert table. My younger cousin, the one they'd bragged about going to an Ivy League school, asked me, "Wait, are you the guy who built that custom walnut desk for that entrepreneur on TikTok?" "Maybe," I said. "No way," he laughed. "That was you?" Suddenly, everyone at the table was staring again. But not with confusion this time. With recognition. With a little fear. Because now I made sense. Now that a stranger validated me. Not when I was building shelves in a borrowed backroom. Not when I was broke and invisible. But now, with buzzwords and association, I was someone. That's dumb. Even in success, I had to pass their test. I finished my lemonade. Set the cup down. Took one last look around the reunion. Lawn chairs, folding tables, familiar faces rearranged by time and bad choices. Then my sister approached. Natalie. Still well-dressed. Still curated. But a little wilted at the edges, like someone who just realized the show she'd starred in had a secret co-writer. She didn't hug me. She didn't smile. She said, "You didn't have to make it a statement." I met her eyes. "I didn't." She blinked. "This is just who I am now," I added. "If that feels like a statement, maybe that says more about you." We stood there in silence. Finally she said, "They never meant to hurt you." "I know," I said. "They just didn't care if they did." That landed. Somewhere behind her ribs, I think. She stepped back. "You're not staying?" I shook my head. "I've got a shop to open in the morning." "You came all this way, just to leave again?" I smiled. "No. I came to make sure I wasn't the one who disappeared." And then I turned and walked back toward the limo. Each step felt like a line drawn in concrete. Not spite. Not anger. Just peace. On my terms. The driver opened the door without a word. Before I got in, I glanced back one more time. No one followed. No one called out. They all just watched. Maybe for the first time, they really looked. The drive home was silent, but not empty. I didn't scroll through old messages. Didn't replay conversations. I didn't need to. There was nothing left to decode. They had shown me who they were, and I had shown up to remind them who I became. That was enough. The limo pulled up outside my shop just after sunset. Golden light poured in through the windows, catching on the sawdust still floating in the air. My kind of cathedral. I stood outside for a moment, letting it all settle. The click of the door as the driver shut it behind me sounded final, but not like an ending. More like the closing of a chapter one didn't realize I'd been writing. Inside, the shop was just how I left it, organized chaos. Tape measures, sketches, coffee mugs, wood glue, half-built pieces that knew where they were headed. It was quiet, yeah. But not like those motel nights back in Brookfield. This quiet was earned. I put on some music, nothing moody, just the old playlist I used when I worked overnight sanding Caleb's cabinets. A little folk, a little soul. The kind of stuff that says, "I survived and I'm not bitter." Joe showed up around 8, holding 2 burritos and a smug grin. "Well? Did they cry?" Scream? Spontaneously combust? I laughed. Nope. Just stared like they were watching a stranger crash their barbecue. She handed me a burrito. I would have paid good money to see it. You kind of did, I said. You bought my boots. We sat on the shop stools and ate dinner with our legs swinging like kids on a dock. She didn't ask how I felt. She didn't need to. After a few bites, I finally said it. They looked at me like I didn't belong. Joe raised an eyebrow. And did you? I shook my head. Not even a little. She smiled. Good. That night, I stayed late at the shop. Not working. Just being. I flipped through my sketchbook, the same one I'd started back in the motel. The cover was worn now, pages curled and smudged, some torn from being stuffed into too many backpacks. But it was full. Every sketch. Every idea. Every version of me that tried and failed and tried again. I grabbed a fresh notebook from the shelf. Opened to page 1. Wrote in clean block letters. Grain Theory Year 3. No revenge plans. No hidden messages. Just goals. Bigger shelves. Smarter systems. Maybe a coffee table line. Maybe a shop dog. I wasn't building to prove anything anymore. I was just building. And if they ever wondered why I didn't stay for hugs and potato salad? Let them. They wrote me off. I wrote a life. And mine has better lighting, stronger joints, and a foundation that never needed their approval.